Hey, yeah, this will be a different episode, kind of just stream of consciousness, processing feelings, trying to unlock more of like the raw, vulnerable parts of me and inside of this podcast. Um, I haven't been on here in a while, and I don't know. Sometimes I don't know most of the times I don't know what I'm doing with this podcast. Um, I'm thinking about it's kind of the messiness of awakening, of processing religious trauma, ego deaths, and yeah, I guess a lot of grief too of what you thought things would be. Um, People along the way that don't make it with you or go different paths. Been thinking about Elden recently. Somebody had commented he had to bring him back, and yeah, kind of grieving. I mean, he and I went different ways as he kind of went into a dark night of the soul, and I wanted to be there with him. I don't know how much of that was my like savior complex or my need to be needed, and yeah, and then processing like this autonomy, letting people go their own way. And so I guess in response to that, I would if I could. I miss Elden. I think awakenings are lonely. Um, because they're often like rooted in this. Yeah, they're rooted in loneliness, and at least mine is was, and I think, yeah, I guess I can only speak more for myself, but I think that a lot of these things hold true to the human experience, which is this craving for connection, to not be alone. And I think in awakenings you can get a taste of that, of meaning and connection, and then you get disappointed. You find teachers that you kind of idolize. This didn't so much happen to me, but I know often people, will kind of, you want to put people on a pedestal. Yeah, I think especially coming from like Mormonism, or a religion where you want there to be a leader. You want somebody to know the way. There's comfort in that. And so there's always gurus that fail and disappoint, sometimes spectacularly. But I think even short of that, I've realized I'm still trying to figure out like what connection means and iterate on how to get it. I'll find, I'll approach it intellectually. Like if this person believes the same thing logically, philosophically, then we'll share some connection. We'll be together. But when I'm finding that's not the case, that there can be some shared connection from similar beliefs, but you can also there's like an optimization function, a vibe, something underneath that is more important. For me, I'm realizing it's like love and compassion that, I don't know, it's funny, you awaken and there's a lot of these same, I guess one of the most startling things was to see that there's kind of like an awakening starter set, and you can have all the same pieces of like non-human intelligences, aliens, the reality is an illusion. But people will build those sets in diametrically opposed ways. Like there's there's an equal amount of these like positive, optimistic, maybe dissociatingly so, videos on YouTube about 5D consciousness, and how the aliens are right around the corner making contact, as ones that are about secret cabals, and that we're all stuck in illusion. And so that's been like another area of disappointment of like, fuck, even if like I believe the same things as people like that, that's not what I'm looking for. I think it's, I had an experience recently with a friend who's Buddhist. And so I kind of, I think intellectually used this sort of crutch of like, this person like believes these things. So we have this shared, it's a seeking of not wanting to be alone. Oh, and then I found myself arguing with him, good naturedly, about ontological, like, materialism versus idealism, of like whether reality is fundamentally matter or experience, and it was painful kind of funny. I was like curious of like why am I arguing? Why is this important to me? Like, what does it even matter? Um, and I was processing, one thing I love about this friend is that he processes things very like kind of real time and uh, kind of metacognitively discuss things. And so, yeah, I was processing it with him. I was like, I think I'm arguing with you because um, there's this like grief or disappointment, this like not wanting to be alone. Um, if you could bring somebody else into your worldview, into your reality, like then you're not alone. But I realize the futility of it too. It's like, well, actually, this doesn't matter. Like, I'm kind of discarding this as another like thing that doesn't matter. It's not what you believe. There's this like underlying vibe. I realized with this person that I think he believes both. Like these parts. Like I think in many ways he'll say things that are very non-dual and idealist. In other ways, it's a very rational, like scientific um, brain too. But underneath both, there's this like bootstrapping of it all on love and connection, and that's what I like realized. Like that's what matters. I've One of the things I'm been forced to like grieve is truth and logic and certainty. Um, I just finished reading Carl Jung's Red Book, which is a fucking masterpiece, but a nightmare of a thing to like get through. But it's this. I very much related to this confrontation with madness and the death of logic, truth, rationality. Um, at the end of this discussion with my friend, he was packing up his kid in the car. I was solo parenting. Valentina was in Italy. It was a chaotic night, and two single at the moment. That night, dads with their kids trying to cope, I think, and find connection. Yeah, we kind of wrapping up this processing, and I told him like truth doesn't really. I don't even know what it means anymore. Like it's not even that itself is like bootstrapped or optimized on some prior assumption, something that like I've realized that some of the happiest people in the world have no grounding in truth. They're what we might call developmentally disabled or intellectually disabled or just kids. I mean, kids aren't, they're not, they don't have truth in any like logical, rational sense of the term, or not what we as grown-ups argue about in science. Like, what does it fucking matter? Because there's a way of being where you can be in deep connection and love. And I realize like truth or falsity is orthogonal. It's on a different axis than like meaning or happiness. And so it's like some of the most brilliant logical scientists can be deeply unhappy and also not have a positive impact on society, while somebody with Down syndrome, that by no objective means of measuring truth or like can be one of the most joyful, have the most joyful experience, as well as seed that into the environment around them. So that's like a death of, like, if truth isn't, like, what does truth mean anymore? And there's, what does anything mean anymore? All of these, there's all these iterations in awakening that continually bring your awareness deeper and deeper into like ground truth, which is just that there's experience. And we're just trying to fucking figure it out. How we can stabilize that experience for ourselves and for what we feel is the others in our experience. We're all hedonists at some, or I think the secret of it all is hedonism. But all that all depends on what you're defining as self, non-dualist hedonism, and that like it's all one. How do we make for the most positive experience for ourselves and for others? It's hard to say without going into self and other, but I guess that may make more sense within time and space, which is how our consciousness how we're used to in Western culture, dicing up the contents of experience, as like hedonism goes wrong, self-centeredness goes wrong when we have an incorrect sense of self. And this is what Christ was getting at in, the golden rule, loving God, loving your neighbor. Yeah, so it's so seductive to draw a boundary between self and other, and dissociate yourself from the other. And it's not that dissociation's bad. Like that's the paradox of this all is there's no experience without dissociation into parts. But I think it's about stability and control, but not control, but like, are you choosing to dissociate? Are you choosing to explore, be curious, or are you retracting into dissociation, into something that you'll pay for later? Yeah, I guess other thoughts that I'm in this long rambling episode, or this frustration of being this middle child. I am a middle child, but also in the metaphorical sense, of the middle child of between rationality and woo. I don't fit in on the one hand, and I don't fit in on the other. My mind is very rational and logical, and kind of overcompensated in that way. So much so that I've logicked my way out of rationality, because I see the circular reasoning and yeah. So you, it's a lonely world being thinking too much. And then the other hand, like I've been through bizarre awakening experiences, like went through a Kundalini awakening that very few people I've met, like, have gone through something like that. Many people have, but like in my experience, awakenings are, yeah, very different, not better or worse, but yeah. So I also tasted this bizarre other flavor of reality, but it's not one that, even if you're there for months, that you fall back into. Like my subconscious, my experience of reality is very 3D, logical, kind of traumatized into space-time. So there's this middle child that fits nowhere. I think more and more people relate to this, though. And I think that's part of the healing, is just recognizing there's a bunch of us that don't feel like we fit anywhere. We're not woo. We're not rationalists, but we're both. Also, politically too, just this so tiring, seeing both sides. I feel like a kid watching their divorced parents fight. Like, I can see the deep, valid fear and fear, the one of the right. And I think there's a lot of things that need to be validated there. And having a wife who is, has been going through the immigration process, like, there are very valid concerns about what's broken in it. And yet on the other side, like, I empathize with the empathy and the compassion of the left. I mean, I grew up as a liberal, it was a badge of honor, especially within Mormonism, but I'm so scared by the anger and lack of awareness on the left too. Not everybody, but that comes from my childhood trauma. But I think maybe it's more useful to in a more useful place to discuss. It's just I just realize it's neither approach is effective. Like, there has to be a middle way, where you see and hold the values of both sides. It's so tiring to feel alone. Autism, neurodivergence, it's also in this as well, of like thinking about this podcast. I'm like, or this recording, I was like, so much of my experience is consciousness trying to escape the prison walls that it's created for itself, trying to like let light in, trying to find ways to relate, trying to invite people in to my reality, explore their reality. And the very act of like creating, it's like, why do I have to pick a fucking platform of like TikTok's too toxic, Instagram, you've got 2 minutes or whatever you can share with a nonsensical sharing. I don't know what a reel is or what how you repost, whatnot. And then I'm like, I've got Riverside, which I record my podcasts on, which I thought my subscription was up. Thankfully it's not. I've got it for another year. But it's so, it's at the same time intimate and that there are moments where I feel like I'm talking to you. I also feel like I'm talking to myself, which is the same, but it's also so lonely too. And that part of why I don't produce more is it does feel like it goes into an empty void. And I know it doesn't, because I know I've consumed things and it's been meaningful, had a meaningful impact on me. And that part of my like vibe or ethos is to like let those people know that they had an impact, because I know how important that is. But and I know several of you have, and I don't know that I've always honored and cared for that in the way that it deserves. So thank you if you have. But yeah, I wish it was more. I wish there was more connection. And I don't know. I've tried things. Valentina and I tried the Mystics Collective, where we met for 8 weeks, and that was nice. But it's very hard to build community. It's hard to stay vulnerable, stay open, open up after 30, 40 years of being closed, and then get re-traumatized. I mean, ironically, I turned off commenting on my on YouTube, and I think on Spotify, just because I was in this like, it's too painful, the comments that come in that I know are just reflections of my own inner psyche, of like, oh, you talk too much, or and then I'll be arguing with these comments in my mind. But at the same time, it's also, yeah, I think this like encapsulates this seesaw of dissociation and feeling, where I see the problem that I have. It's not feeling the feelings, so I want to let them in, and I know that ultimately is the path towards integration and wholeness. But at the same time, it's so fucking painful too, and then and can take you out of the window of tolerance. And so then you close things up, and then there's something healthy about that as well. And so, yeah, so I know that this has been meaningful to people from, those of you that have emailed and commented, and yeah, I guess I'd encourage you, like, if it is, and if you want to create more of this type of world or reality, like, reach out to not just me, but like the people that have had an impact on you. Yeah, just create the connection, do unto others as you would have them do it to you. Because unless you complete that circle, it's hard to close the loop, because even though intellectually, logically, I know that putting something out there has an impact, sometimes you're just running on fumes. at the end of the day, I think that this is just ultimately, for me, it's the way my consciousness processes. And I just happened to invite you into my journey. And I think for some of you, that's what you were looking for. Anybody listening, I'm assuming that's what you're looking for. Yeah, so suppose that's at the end of the day why I should do what I do. Because if it's helpful for me. But yeah, and then that's not the reality I want to live in, of just self-centeredness. That's the other trap of like the logical mind, is that you just live in this fucking paradox after paradox after paradox. Like the minute I feel anger towards somebody, there's this logical loop of like spiritually bypassing all of that, of like, it's just yourself, it's all one. The logical mind is good at infinite regress. I think I've gotten on here to share and process what I feel like I wanted to. Partly because it's helpful for me, but partly because I'm the type of person that I see people in these flashes of light. I would get online and like be curious about why somebody did something at this point in their life and like where they are now, and could they sustain that? And so I suppose I feel I'm going to close the loop, that it's like as you know, like the journey's hard, and there's no way out. And I think that's the vibe of my consciousness is this. It's kind of like a bacteria that's finds itself in some toxic environment where there's just nothing left to metabolize except some thing, and you adapt and you learn to live with that. And then when you find your way in a healthier environment, like then you have to unlearn that and like honor that resilience, that strength. But it's definitely like, I often feel like my journey in reality is finding yourself trapped in the Gnostic hell of space-time, 3D, finding yourself in the matrix and realizing there is no escape. So given that we're here for eternity, how do we bide our time? And there's a joke about Mormons in the afterlife, of some guy goes to heaven and St. Peter's giving him a tour, and And he shows them around heaven, and then he shows them like, he's like, oh, over there you'll see, over that's the bad place, hell. And the guy looks over and he's like, I don't understand. It's like beautiful down there. And I think St. Peter says something like, oh, damn, Mormons have been irrigating again. And I think that's like what I try to do, I guess, is how do we alchemize pain and suffering into meaning? And yeah, I guess we don't have any other choice.